signs like that. And it's
Okay.
just like, but because this is all 100% now, and everything else is good.
When are they going to end those furloughs?
Can they see me?
Literally, there's an incision all over. So weird because
I know they're broadcasting right now. So you're like all over the internet.
No, because what they'll do is they'll go arthroscopic with you.
You think?
Yeah, they'll go arthroscopic with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will they be able to show you?
You'd be surprised at what they can do arthroscopically. Because they went on this one, they went arthroscopic on me. They went 2 in the front, 1 in the back.
How's the family?
They just basically went, you know, like, and they did all their work arthroscopically, and through that they put 3 anchors in my shoulder. They actually inserted, they drilled the inserted anchors and then hooked the cartilage onto the anchors.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. I know.
No, but
I was that way my senior year.
this part is done. And you can actually feel the divot where the hole is, and the screw right through it. You can actually feel it. Because see, bone is one thing that it never grows back. So if you drill a hole in the bone, it'll never.
So do you think you're gonna go on your prom?
So if you did there's a hole. Oh, did she call? Oh, good.
I don't want to miss her because...
Good. Awesome.
I just like to shower too much. It's dumb.
It might be calling you. I can do it sometimes.
But I might. I really want to because it's a masquerade ball.
How fun. That would be fun.
And like...
No, there's a crock pot waiting for you when you get home.
Is it good in the crock pot?
I want to toast it in the cold.
Chicken enchilada stuff.
Why are we talking about food right now?
I'm not. She is.
Why, people? Why?
She's hungry. Hello. Hi. Hi. As I'm saying, do you have a problem?
You have a problem.
I'm not meant towards you.
Don't let her deceive you. It was totally meant at you. Alright, Cam, is there anything I can help you?
Just chill, Randy.
Oh, I think yum. I'm like, that is
So I got a big box.
vinegar and salt.
Chips.
Gum. But on
In my trunk.
Well, they have...
on the plus side,
They have
Chips in my car.
I'm off until...
I can't eat in here.
So,
Tell them to change their
for
rules.
now, I'm going to eat some gum.
Just for us.
You're going to eat some gum.
I even have a ton of bugles
on it. And then don't swallow it.
I should give you all my bugles, Michelle.
Do you have them in your car?
Yes.
Get them.
You can't eat in here.
You can put them on the counter outside.
Oh yeah, then everyone in there would take them.
She can put them in her purse and then just kind of...
She can be like...
Movie theaters.
Movie theater. We were talking about that today. With their
Well,
big
that's
bag.
the
Man, what's in the bag?
That's
It's
the
my
case.
big purse.
Here, it's all my money to go
All my
to
money to pay for your theater.
Dad, that's what we do. I always make sure to bring a big purse, and then I will bring candy and snacks in.
That's what my mom and I did. The Breaking Down of Dog
Right out.
premiere. We went and she bought we both bought Red Bulls.
Where is everybody? 6:30? Almost.
Where are you in?
Who you is? I had this... We had this... we went to this conference down in Fresno. We met this guy. Really good guy. Like he was telling us the story.
I don't even remember the story, but he said,
How it was his
is?
daughter. It was his daughter.
And it just made us giggle.
And it
So
was his
ever
daughter's
since then, we've
supposed
always
boyfriend.
said, where you is?
And
Who
it
you
was
is?
like, he was, and I just walked up to that boy, and I was like, who you is?
That's right.
He didn't watch Rubber. I asked him already.
Brother?
What'd you say? Is it because I said it?
Oh, yes, he did.
Randy, don't ever do that again.
He did so well, though.
Years of experience.
It's really cool.
Like it's what he used to do.
I don't think you can do that.
Apparently everyone
So So Randy, when are we going to talk about
Oh
camp?
yeah, I made an account.
I don't know. When do you want to talk about camp?
Since I missed the
For the
meeting.
block?
I know.
For,
When do you want to talk about camp?
Oh, okay.
I need a ride, so.
So it's just
Downtown and you were
Because I got kicked out of
I
downtown.
felt like you
did.
were working on it.
It's the
Fusion
12.
10 or something.
Okay.
How's it going?
Yeah, write it down and put it on that
I
computer.
might go on the opera camp.
Hey,
I missed you again today.
I've been tired.
No.
But you guys left.
So do you know what I'd be doing if
Oh yeah.
I just had the best chicken tender.
No, you'd be.
We got
you'd be
chicken
a captain.
tenders at
I had so many bad kitchen experiences.
You know, you'll be a captain.
I was the kitchen boy of doom, just like Sam.
So, tomorrow, are you
You might have to resurrect.
Because then you can.
No! That's only the thing of doom. Sammy is the only one that can say that.
She'll be a captain. So maybe I'll say, hey, we need to resurrect.
And then we're going to bring Ross Abad to camp.
Yes. Well, I'm probably not.
Well, I know how to
house because everybody's coming over tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, tomorrow night's prayer.
Yes, tomorrow night's prayer at our house.
I don't have any church in right now.
I know.
So I'll come over right after I'm done with my shift and I'll take Salem.
You're going to church
Okay.
tomorrow?
Are you working in
Not
West
church
Salem now?
tomorrow.
You're gonna
Because
be-
I'm
Oh,
doing it
yeah.
every day. So,
I'm going to be working the 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. shift.
maybe if our mom comes, she'll take us.
Well,
I'm at a different house.
bro, you need, I think you need to
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
get replaced in there.
Satan's supposed to be people tonight.
Working the gas that it takes to drive that long.
Did you still want to do public outreach on Saturday?
Yeah, it could be.
What time? Because my aunt and I are going driving in the morning at like
My
8.
dad let me
Maybe
stay.
talk to Dawn.
So,
Find out if
the other day, the last Saturday we had in here, we were out.
I love my Almsville community though.
I feel the
Yeah.
If I get back on council, I can use my study.
Well, it just depends. Like, if I can get
I only get $85 a month from them.
like we can
That's a lot. That's not much, dude. I got $85 a gas.
yeah.
And you just come from West Salem.
I know.
I think when you go into the party, you guys should just be like, you know, here's this.
All right, you guys ready to get going? We're going to start on time. We were expecting a bigger class, and we have a smaller class tonight.
And we're all spread out.
Staten was planning on being here with like 10 students tonight, and the Willises told me they were bringing a handful of people, and
Maybe they're trying to find parking still.
it could be. I mean, we're actually starting right on time, so. But we'll go ahead and get started. Maybe we can pray and then get started. But maybe we can get a couple people to, like all you guys in the back can scoot forward. You don't have to sit on the side. We'll fill these seats. That way the people that are late don't have to totally disturb and try to shuffle for a seat up front. So, alright, come on up. And besides that, you learn more right here. You really do, sure. Alright. Well, let's pray and we'll get started. I've got a fun class for us today. So, Drew, would you open us up in prayer tonight?
Sure. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this night, God, and we thank you for everything you've done in our lives, God. And we ask that you just bless this class, God, bless everyone here, that we may open our ears and our minds to learn what you have for us, God. And we just thank you for this time and bless it. In your name we pray.
Amen. So we're going to do a quick intro and outro later. So if you'll just give, I think I can take 55 minutes. I'll be fine. Okay. So just help me with 55. That would be great.
Alright, I'm going to change your lights here so don't get freaked out. Go ahead.
We're ready? Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to Lift in the month of April. And I'm excited that you guys are here. I'm starting a brand new series today called Moses the Leader. So we're going to spend several months going through Exodus and the life of Moses. And, you know, when you think of leadership, I know for me anyway, my hero in leadership is Paul, right? Paul and Timothy. As you know, I've been teaching on with Paul and Timothy since we basically started Connection Life Church, and now we're moving forward, actually moving back, but we're going to move back into looking at even older biblical models, such as Moses. You don't always think of Moses being one of the great leaders in the Bible, although some will. A lot of times we look right past that because we want to get right to the gospel. We want to get right to the Pauls and the Timothys. But really, if you really think about it, Moses was one of the greatest leaders in the Bible, and we're going to discover why that is over the next several months in Lift class. Okay. So over the next hour, we're going to start with Exodus. We're going to go into Exodus. So we'll be in Exodus for the next few months, actually. And we're going to start in Exodus chapter 2. We really can learn quite a bit. I don't have any handouts for you this series. I might later on, but for the intro, we're not going to have any handouts, so just take really good notes. But we can learn quite a bit from Moses as a leader. But even before Moses became a leader, I want us to learn how God positioned him to become a leader. So we're not just going to look at him as a leader. We're going to look at him as being positioned to become a leader. Okay, so we're going to start from the very beginning when Moses was being positioned for leadership. Let's just think about it. What significant events took place in Moses' life that contributed toward his journey towards leadership? Can you think of any significant events in Moses' life that happened that really contributed to his journey towards leadership? Okay. Well, you can probably think of a few things in your head right now. We're going to go over them in detail. But what challenges did he overcome that contributed to his journey to leadership? Okay? So we're going to look at significant events of Moses that contributed to his journey towards leadership, and we're going to look at significant challenges that actually helped him towards his journey toward leadership. And then how can we today relate those events and those challenges in Moses' life to the challenges and the events that we go through today? Are there any parallels? Are there any events that are common to us in our own daily life, in our personal life? Because I think that once we dive into this, you're like, whoa, I've been right there where Moses was. Okay? And we're going to challenge ourselves to think beyond the norm. What is a normal view of a leader? What do we normally think makes up a leader versus what did Moses look like coming into leadership? Okay, so we're going to look at that. And let's just go through a quick synopsis of the life of Moses. First of all, God led his people through generations of slavery in Egypt and then made them into a great nation, okay? He led Moses into the wilderness to prepare and develop him as a leader. Moses was in training for 80 years. So if you're 13 or 14 or 18, you think you know it all, okay, Moses was in training for 80 years. Moses became the first political leader of a full-fledged Israelite nation. Then the people responded well, and it seemed as if nothing could stop them. That was a mistake. The Israelites actually lost sight of their vision. And then Moses takes too long to come down with the Ten Commandments, which you might relate is kind of like their constitution of their nation. This is like the Ten Commandments was like their constitution. This was as it is written, and these are the laws. And but Moses took too long to come down with that constitution or the Ten Commandments. And so what did the people do? They got a little anxious. They lacked patience, and so they built themselves a golden calf and began to worship that instead. So that's not a very good move on their part. The journey becomes long and hard, and the people begin to whine and complain. Have you ever been there with your people? Okay, maybe with your family. Have you ever been in a car for more than 30 minutes with little kids? All right, the journey becomes really long, and people start to whine and complain. The people nearly revolted against Moses' leadership several times, and then we see that their doubt, their disobedience, their lack of cooperation, their idolatry, and attitude against Moses delayed them receiving their dream by 40 years. By 40 years. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of what transpired through the life of Moses. And now let's break it down starting in the beginning. And in the beginning was what? He had to be born, right? He had to be born. So let's start with Exodus chapter 2. Do you know how to spell that? That's for you guys taking notes. Is it W-A-A-A-A-A-H? Yeah. It's more powerful the more A's you put in, right?
Is it in the dictionary?
I don't know. So Exodus chapter 2, I'm going to start with verse 1. And it says, and I'm reading out of the New King James Version, "And a man of the house of Levi went and took as wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark out of the bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river's bank." And just a quick reminder, why did she have to do that? Why did she have to hide him for 3 months? Do you remember why? Because Pharaoh was what? Killing all the firstborn boys. Right? So here she is. This is her first son, her eldest. And Pharaoh puts out an order that every firstborn son shall be killed. So she hides him for 3 months. Gets away with it for 3 months. But how long can you get away with it? Well, for her, 3 months. And then what? Then she has to do something else. So what does she do? She created an ark, the Bible describes it as, and puts him in the water and sends him on his way. If you think about the life of Moses, being born at the time that Pharaoh puts out a decree that every firstborn male is to be put to death, would that be a good hand dealt to you or a bad hand dealt to you? That's not so good. That's not so good. Like maybe if you were born second in line, you're like, "Oh, dude, bummer for you." Right? Who got the good hand? Who got the bad hand? Right? What if you were twins and you just were born a minute first? That's a bummer. Right? Sometimes you get dealt a bad hand in life. That's how we like to describe it. Sometimes even us leaders can look at our life and say, "Man, my life, it was just, I didn't get the hand you got dealt. I had more challenges in my life. My life, I got the bad hand. I got a bad deal in life." Well, let's look at Moses pre-leader. And I would say it's pretty safe to say he got dealt a bummer hand being firstborn, being ordered to die. You have to understand that Moses, as we know, if we look forward many, many years, we know that Moses was one of the best leaders in the Bible. Okay? We know that. Now I want us for this month to reflect on Moses pre-leader. Not everybody that's a great leader comes from an affluent family. Not everybody that is a great leader comes from a lineage of really smart guys and gals. Okay? Not everybody that's a great leader can you assume that they just had everything neat and packaged and, they probably came from a really good life. Because if you ask Moses, he'd say, no. No, in fact, when I was born, I was sentenced to death before I was even old enough to know why. In fact, my mama had to give me off. In fact, she couldn't even give me off like somebody else. Like, now they've got great foster systems. Now they've got great adoption agencies. No. I didn't have that good of a life. No, she put me in a raft, put me in the river, and said, bye-bye. Now, if I told you that story today, if that was on the news, if that was posted on Facebook, you would string that mama up to dry. Right? So not everybody that's a great leader gets dealt the same hand. Not everybody that's a great leader comes from an affluent family with or has privileged lives. In fact, let me share with you, when you become a great leader, you will oftentimes be misjudged as having a great and easy life. The people will just assume because you're a great leader that your house must be fabulous, you have no problems, no issues, and you probably came from an affluent family, and you probably don't know what it's like to suffer if you're a great leader. If you're a great leader, people will accuse you of not knowing what it's like to want or to not be able to pay your bills or but that's not reality. That's not true. Okay? Ask Pastor Randy, who has outstanding parking tickets right now. Okay? Life ain't always easy, is it? I mean, he's got issues. He doesn't even have anywhere to park. And he's got to volunteer to serve at the church for free. And now pay to volunteer for free. Life isn't always easy. Now, if you've got $150 worth of parking, I'm not saying that's how much he has, but if you did, and now you got to either pay your parking tickets or your water bill, and if you don't pay your parking tickets, the next time you park anywhere downtown, you're going to get the boot. Or pay your water bill. Which one do you pay? Well, you might say, well, your water bill, of course. Okay, well then you're not driving downtown anywhere between the hours of 9 and 6. Monday through Saturday. Brother Lance knows exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Because he works downtown. It's a tough... Okay, I'm getting sidetracked, but life isn't always easy for the great leaders. It's not always easy. The great leaders sometimes don't even have enough money in their pocket to go get a decent meal. So they go home after volunteering and eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I remember as a child being in revival from morning till night, 7 days out of the week, and going home at around 11 o'clock at night only to eat waffles for dinner or scramble up some eggs because that's all we had. Great leaders don't always come from affluent and privileged homes. Moses didn't come from an affluent and privileged home. In fact, he came from a home where they were trying to kill him. That's the era he lived in. We need to stop thinking that we aren't worthy and know that God calls who he wants to call when he wants to call them. Why am I going back this far? Because too many great leaders are not becoming great leaders because they don't think that they deserve to be great leaders. Too many great leaders are giving up on their dream of being a leader because they don't think that they rate. They think that they were supposed to come from a different lifestyle, or they were supposed to live a different way, or they don't think that they qualify or that they're worthy of being a great leader. And I'm telling you today, everyone in this room, God will call you when he wants to call you, whoever he wants to call.
Amen.
And you don't have to come from an affluent or privileged home. Okay, so we got to stop thinking that. You got to stop thinking. Some will look at myself or or other pastors or Bishop Pratt or Brother Darrell and say, well, these guys have been preaching a long time, they've been in leadership a long time, and you know, I just don't have what they have. I'd like to know what inventory you're looking at. What do you mean you don't have what I have? Because I don't have much. I just don't have much. I mean, because if you don't have a blue Buick that tries to die on you every time it stops, then you're right. You don't have what I have. I'll gladly trade you any day. Okay? But I don't know, something in the minds of immature leaders, they think that they don't have what everybody else has, so they can't do what everybody else does. That's not true. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter if you came from a broken home or a not broken home. It doesn't matter if you had a rich family or a poor family. God calls who He wants to call when He wants to call them, and that's you. So stop thinking you can't be a leader and know that you can. Know that you can. Okay? Let's continue. Exodus chapter 2, verse 4. Okay, now here's what just happened. Pharaoh is ordered to kill all the firstborn, so the mother, Moses' mother, hides him out for 3 months, can't hide him any longer, puts him in the water, in a raft, sends him on his way. Okay? But, this is really cool in verse 4. And his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside, and when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. Verse 6. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him, and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you? Okay, I want to take your eyes off of Moses for just a second, because there's more to the story than just Moses. Here is a mother probably weeping as she has to give up her firstborn child. Or firstborn son. Firstborn son. She's probably weeping. So she pushes it off. But there's an older sister in the story. And the older sister stands a little ways away. But the Bible clarifies why. Why was she standing far away? Why was she standing afar? Because it says in your Bible, she stood afar to know what would be. In other words, the sister was positioning herself to know the outcome. We need to position ourselves to know the outcome. When my children start to complain about something that happens to them, I say to them, you should have known better. Okay? You should have known better. But, no buts. You should have known better. You should position yourself to know what would be. As good leaders, we need to position ourselves to know what would be. Sometimes we think as good leaders we need to draw the hard line, and we need to say this is how it is and there's no other exceptions, this is it. But that is not always positioning yourself to know what would be. There are times where we as great leaders need to know when to make an exception because we've positioned ourselves to know what would be. If you draw a hard line without positioning yourself to know what would be, you could get yourself in trouble. Well, I got to stand for what I stand for. I got to draw the line somewhere. Well, that's true. We have lines at Connection Life Church. We have values that are to be adhered to. There's lines that we draw for standards and expectations of leaders in our church. That is true. But once you have established yourself, in other words, once you have positioned yourself, then there's plenty of grace. There's plenty of grace. Why? Because we're positioning ourselves to know the outcome. If you don't position yourself to know the outcome, you'll make decisions based on hard lines and based on selfish motives and based on everything but pure motives. So you've got to position yourself to see the outcome, and that's what his sister did. Most of us would be freaking out right about then. She didn't freak out. She positioned herself. By positioning self, you become aware. There's 3 things I want you to learn about positioning yourself. Number 1, be aware. Why do you position yourself? To be aware. Okay? When we go hunting, now I haven't hunted in a while, but when we did go hunting, I would position myself so that I can see and I'm aware of all my surroundings. I get up high and I position myself to be aware. And then once I position myself, I make myself aware, and then you be observant. When you position yourself, you have to be aware and you have to be observant. In other words, see what's going on around you. My son just got his driver's license. That freaks me out. Because I'm not completely convinced that he's positioned himself to be aware and be observant yet. Okay? When you're driving, you need to position yourself to be aware, Susie, and be observant. Okay? Be aware and be observant. And thirdly, be in position. Be in position. When you're hunting, you are in position, because if you're not in position, you'll miss your opportunity. So his sister positioned herself afar so that she could be aware of what was happening in the outcome, so that she could be observant to what's going to happen to my brother, and so that she can be in position to assist. So she positioned herself. Then I want you to understand this about the sister. Not only did she position herself, she postured herself. She postured herself to assist in the outcome. How could she have possibly assisted in the outcome if she didn't first position herself to assist? She wouldn't have been around. Well, what are you talking about? Well, remember how the story goes? So here is Moses, and Pharaoh's daughter is bathing, and then all of a sudden, one of the maids sees Moses. But you know what's interesting is that Moses' sister positioned herself to see the outcome and then do something about it. You see how that happens? This is good leadership. Not everything happens the way you want it to happen, but when it doesn't, you've positioned yourself to assist in the outcome. Okay? Because ideally, the mom and the sister would have loved to just go in and picket Pharaoh and go get a bunch of people to picket Pharaoh and to protest and save our firstborn, save our firstborn, save our... I'm posting on Facebook, I'm going to get 1 million likes. I mean, that's what they would have liked to have done, but they couldn't. They couldn't do it. There are going to be times in your life where you can't change what's happening, but you can position yourself to assist in the outcome. You can't change as a leader everything, but you can position yourself to assist in the outcome. There are a lot of things that I'd love to change, but I just can't. So the only thing I can do now is position myself to assist in the outcome. So that's what she did. That's what she did. So what did she do after she positioned herself? She postured herself. And what does that mean, to posture? Well, there's 3 more B's. When you posture yourself, you must be ready. So here she is. She's hiding out. She's afar, watching her baby brother go down the stream. And she's just positioned herself to see the outcome. Then once she sees the outcome, now she runs to Pharaoh and postures herself to assist. How do you know that? Well, because she was the first one to go and say, oh, would you like me to go get a Hebrew nursing mother? So she postured herself and she was ready. She was ready. I could just see her in the brushes. There she is. She's going to grab him. Now! And she runs up, says, wow, look at that baby. Would you like some help? Can I assist you with that? Can I go get one of the nursing mothers for you? So she was ready, wasn't she? After you position yourself, you have to be ready. See, there's a lot of people that try to position themselves in a church, but yet they're not positioning themselves and posturing themselves to be ready. Many, many leaders want to position themselves in the church, but they don't want to make themselves ready. They're not ready. You know how I know that? There are lots of people, especially in my youth pastoring days, there were a lot of people that they wanted to position themselves on our youth staff, but then when I called on them, said, well, let me pray about that, Pastor. Okay, you get back to me, and when you get back to me, then I might use you. You're not ready. You got to be ready. You got to be ready. Secondly, when you posture yourself, you've got to be willing to serve. You've got to be willing to serve. That's what the sister didn't do. Or this is what the sister didn't do. The sister didn't go to Pharaoh and say, oh, look at that baby. You should go get a nursing mother from the Hebrew women. That's what a lot of weak leaders like to do. Pastor Kevin, I got this great idea. You should do this. They're not ready, and they're not willing to serve. They're in position like they're going to be, but they don't posture themselves for leadership. They position themselves for leadership, but they don't posture themselves for leadership. Those are the ones that will come up to you. If you're a leader here, they'll come up to you and say, you should try this. I've got a great idea. Have you ever thought of doing this? How come you aren't doing this? I like to say, how come you're not doing that? That's what I like to say. Pastor, you should change this. You should change this and change that. Pastor, I wish you would teach more on this. You should teach more on that. Why do you keep telling me to do that? Well, you should start a mission for this. I'm like, you start a mission for this. We want to position ourselves, but we don't want to posture ourselves. She postured herself to serve Pharaoh's daughter. She positioned herself, then postured herself by being ready and by being willing to serve. Would you like me to go get a nursing mom from the Hebrew women? Would you like me to go get? Would you like me to? Pastor, would you like me to take out that trash because it needs to be done? Pastor, would you like me to pray today? Pastor, can I help organize this function? That's posturing yourself for great leadership. Being willing to serve. Not telling people what should be done, but being willing to serve and making sure that gets done. Thirdly, when you posture yourself, you must be ready, you must be willing to serve, and you must be smart. Capital S-M-A-R-T. Be smart. Be smart. And we learned this from his sister, who positioned herself, postured herself, was willing to serve, and then she was smart. It's like, can I go get a nursing woman for you from the Hebrew women? Young lady, that's a fantastic idea. Why don't you go do that? Okay. I just happen to know one. It's my mom. It's Moses' mom. Oh my goodness. Talk about being smart. That young lady was smart. It's like, oh, here's an opportunity to save my brother and not lose him. She was posturing herself. What else did we learn in that part of the passage? She positioned herself, she postured herself, and then she planted herself. She planted herself. How did she plant herself? What do we mean by planted? Well, think about what she was offering. She went to Pharaoh's daughter and says, listen, this young child needs to be nursed. Well, nursing could take a while. It could take a year. It could take 2 years. Some are nursing for 3 years. Hopefully by their 7th or 8th birthday they're done, but you never know, you know. But nursing could take a while. It could take a while. So what did she do? She positioned herself, then postured herself to serve, and then offered her services knowing that it would take a while. So let me go get one of the nursing moms. This child's going to need a nursing mom for a season. For a season. In other words, I'm here. I'm ready. I'm planted. I'm going to serve. So what do you need? This child's going to need it for a while. Let me plant myself right here and make sure this child gets everything he needs. Can I help you? That's a good idea, young lady. Go get one of the women. Go get one of the women. She planted herself. Now, when you plant yourself, there's 3 more B's. When you plant yourself, you must be reliable. Actually, I'm not going to identify any season of my life or anything else. I'm just going to say that in all of my years of ministry, I've had people plant themselves in my ministry, but not reliable. Pastor, I'm here. I'm planted. This is home ground. I'm digging my roots deep, and then I don't see him for 3 weeks. Pastor, I want to help. Whatever you need, you let me know. Okay. I'll let you know. And then I don't see him for 2 weeks. If you're going to plant yourself, you need to be reliable if you're going to be a good leader. Now, if you're just a pew warmer, then that's a different story. You can come and warm our pews all you want and then go home. Come when you want, leave when you want, that's fine. But if you're going to be a great leader, when you plant yourself, you must be reliable. Moses' sister planted herself. She was going to be reliable. And why do we know this? I just have to assume that if Pharaoh's daughter was willing to let this young lady take on this job, which is very important, then she must have been reliable. There must have been something about her that Pharaoh's daughter said, yeah, this is a perfect job for you, go do that. Come back when you found her, the right woman to nurse this young child. She was reliable. When you plant yourself, secondly, you need to be long-term. So don't just be reliable for a little while, be long-term. Those are the greatest stories that I just love to hear. And when I hear stories, there was a time where I was learning under Casey Treat. I went to all of his pastor trainings and I went to his conferences. I got to hang out with him a lot. And in some of my discussions with him, one thing that he said to me really stood out. Him and I were having lunch one day, and I said, "How long has your staff been with you?" And he said, "Every single person on my staff, with the exception of one, has been with me more than 17 or 18 years. Every single one of them." And the one that had not been there for over 18 years had been with him for like 12. Everybody else was near 20 years with him. Do you know how that touched me? That was such an amazing thing. It really stuck with me. Because when someone plants themselves with you and they're in it for the long term, there is so much more you can do with your team that you couldn't do otherwise. So much more. There's strength, there's unity, there's power, there's trust, there's grace, there's forgiveness, there's learning, there's mentoring, there's family, there's spaghetti dinners. I mean, there's just so much more that you get when you're long-term. Okay? So when you plant yourself, you have to be reliable, and you have to be in it for a while. You've got to be long-term. Okay? I truly believe, and I know that God is in it, that for those of you that have been with us since the inception of Connection Life Church, and those of you that are with us now, if you stick around for the long term, you're going to have an amazing story. You really are. You're going to have an amazing story. I have another friend, and he was up at Wendell Smith's church. And when Wendell Smith, he's the one who started City Church up in Kirkland. Huge, huge church. How many thousands do they have? It's just huge. Yeah. It's massive. And the Curleys and I both know many of their staff, including the pastor there now, Judah Smith. I've known him since he was a teenager. Now he's running things in this mega church. Well, their youth pastor, his name was Jude Fuquay. And Jude Fuquay used to come and do stuff with us at our youth events and everything. And I got to talking to Jude one day, and I said, Jude, how did you begin? How did this all start? He goes, well, Pastor Wendell was starting a church one day. And we just started, I think it was in his garage. There's just a handful of people in the garage. And I was there. I go, wow. He goes, and then we moved into a strip mall, and I was there. And decades later, he was there. He was there. Those kind of stories are stories of true great leaders. How often do you see a really great leader and their story is, well, I was with this guy for about a year and a half, and then I switched over to this church, and that didn't work out too well, so I kind of moved over to the coast where things were happening a little bit more, and I was there for about 2.5 years, and then the salt air just didn't work for me, so I moved over to this. How often do you see a great leader with that story? You don't. You don't. Great leaders position themselves, they posture themselves, and then they plant themselves. And when they plant themselves, they're reliable and they're long-term. And then they be needed. I know that doesn't sound grammatically correct, but that's how it is in my notes. Be reliable, be long-term, and then be needed. Be needed. Make yourself needed in the church. Like, Pastor Kevin, you need me. Let me tell you why you need me. Tell me, please. Because I have a heart. I'm passionate about this. I want to run with this. And I've got ideas. And God's given me this. And you need me because nobody else is doing it. I say, hey, then I need you. Let's get this done. Be long-term and then be needed. Be needed. Figure it out. Many, many people in the church today, even today at Connection Life Church, as much as we do as a little church in Salem, Oregon, there are people within our own body right now that still wonder, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I'm not sure where I'm needed. Don't wait for somebody to tell you where they need you. You plant yourself and be needed. Be needed.
Mm-hmm.
Find out where there's holes. Find out where there's gaps. And make yourself needed. Be needed. Pastor, you need me. Because nobody else is taking out the trash. You need me. I'm going to be the one that does it. Pastor, you need me because nobody else is doing the bulletins. I'm going to be the one that does the bulletins. You need me. If you're kind of lost as a leader, you say, well, I know I'm supposed to be a leader, but I'm just not sure where I'm needed. You figure that out. You figure that out. I need to be needed. Okay? So someone came up to me just last week and says, Pastor, you need me. It was almost exactly like I'm describing right now. I got a long email. Pastor, you need me. Well, she started out with, Pastor, you need an administrator. I'm tired of you being so tired. I'm tired of you having to do everything. You do this, you do this, you do this. You need an administrator. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I do. That would be fantastic. Then you know what she did? Here's my resume. You need me. You know what? She may not be the most qualified, but what she's done is she's positioned herself, she's postured herself, and then she's planted herself. Great leaders position themselves, posture themselves, and then they plant themselves. I want to be a great leader. I want to be a great leader. And listen, I've had my seasons of moving. I don't want to move anymore. I don't want to move anymore. I was in Eastern Washington for about 8 years. That's actually pretty good. I was actually one of the longest standing youth pastors in the entire Tri-Cities, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I left, I was the old guy. I started as the young guy, but when I left, I was the old guy. I was there for nearly 8 years. And really, I was there longer than that if you count my about year and a half before I went and was in Spokane for about a year and a half. So I was there for a while. Then we went to Iowa. I served in Iowa for about 3 years. And now we're here. My story's not all over the map, a little bit over the map. But you know what? God orchestrated all that because I would have never been introduced to the Church of God of Prophecy unless I went to Iowa. That's where I was introduced to the Church of God of Prophecy, when a Church of God of Prophecy pastor came to one of my independent conferences. He didn't care if it was an independent conference. He came, and we hooked up. We merged. And that's how I was introduced. So I think God had it all orchestrated because when I came to Oregon, my brother-in-law and I had every intention of starting another independent church. But God wasn't having that. There was a reason why I was introduced to the Church of God of Prophecy, and then as I came to Iowa, the Church of God of Prophecy regional overseer in Iowa, along with my mother, made sure that the regional overseer in Oregon knew that I was here. So then we got together, and the rest is, as you know, is history. So God orchestrated all that, but once you plant yourself, make it long term and make yourself needed. I try to do that all the time in the regional level. I try to make myself needed to Bishop Pratt. Bishop Pratt, you need me. You need me. See, if I make sure that I'm needed, he ain't going to do nothing with me. I just be needed. Otherwise, there's lots he could do with some of us guys. He could just put us here or put us there or say, hey, you're not needed here, so you're done. You know? But I make sure I be needed. Isn't that right, Judy? I mean, I built a website for him. I built a reporting system for him. If that all went away, what would we do, Judy? We'd go back to paper? Oh, Lord, help us. Most of us can't even turn in a digital file, let alone a piece of paper. My goodness. Be reliable, be long-term, and be needed. Exodus 2:8. Let's finish up. Exodus 2:8. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, remember now, She positioned herself, she postured herself, and then she planted herself to be ready. So Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the maiden went and called the child mother. How smart is that? How smart is that? When you position yourself, posture yourself, and plant yourself, God can turn a bad situation into a good situation. It doesn't matter what your situation is. If you position yourself, posture yourself, and plant yourself, He'll turn every bad situation you have into a good one. It's pretty cool the way that works. You know when you have a really bad day and God turns it into a good day because you didn't have a bad attitude? And then you know when you have a really bad day and a bad attitude, then what happens? More bad. That's what happens. When you're having a bad day and then you have a bad attitude on top of that bad day, guess what happens? Your bad day becomes a bad week. Then your bad week becomes a bad month. Then your bad month becomes a bad year. But when you have a bad day and you have a good attitude, something clicks with God, and He says, I'm going to take your bad experience and turn it into good. And that's what happened in this story. The mother was going to lose her son. As a leader in the church, you need to position yourself to see what's ahead, posture yourself to serve the pastor in the church and the ministry that you're involved with, and then plant yourself long term. Let's read verse 9. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away." Now we're talking about Moses' mother, right? "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. Again, the bad situation, mother was about to lose her son, and Moses was supposed to be killed. Bad day. Would we all agree that's a bad day?
Yeah.
But because they didn't panic, He turned a bad situation into a good situation. Not only does she get her son back, but now she gets paid to take care of her own son. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's God working for you on your behalf. Took a bad deal and made it a good deal. Took a bad situation and made it great. It's like, you know what? You're not going to lose your son today. In fact, I'm going to give you your son back, and I'm going to pay you to take care of him. That's pretty cool. Finally, the last verse. Verse 10 today, for tonight. Verse 10. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, because I drew him out of the water. What do you notice about this? If Pharaoh releases your son, you would think that, oh my gosh, I have my son back. Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. Let's flee. We got Moses back. Let's go. She could have been saying that. The sister could have been saying that. Everybody in the house could have been saying that. Thank you, God, we got Moses back. Let's go. Let's get out of here. But no. No, that's not positioning yourself, posturing yourself, and planting yourself. That's positioning yourself, getting what you want, and then saying, I'm out. And that's what too many leaders, so-called leaders in the church, try to do. They position themselves, they get what they want, and then they're out. They bounce. But thank God, that's not what Moses' mom or sister had in mind. They planted themselves. They planted themselves. What do I have, 9 minutes? Perfect. The child grew. That means he was with mom for a while. Through Christmas, through Easter, through birthdays. The child grew. And I'm not a mom, but when you nurse your child, something happens there. There's a bonding. There's a growing together. There's an impartation. Something happens. Okay? When you raise a child, when you rear up a child, this naturally takes place. Now, what's the good thing about Moses' sister and mother? Here's what we find through their story. Leaders don't panic. They just trust God that things will turn around in their favor. Whenever anything bad happens to me, I just trust God that He's going to turn things around in my favor. Don't panic. I don't panic. And I tell my kids, don't panic. When something happens, don't panic. Don't freak out. Don't panic. We got this. We got this. So, weak leaders, here's what happens when they panic. Weak leaders give up too early. Things start to look bad, they give up. Things don't happen the way they thought, they give up. I know people who gave up right before their blessing. How do I know? Because I knew what they were praying for. And as soon as they gave up, guess what happened? Their blessing arrived, but they weren't anywhere around to receive it. They weren't anywhere around to receive it. That's one of my favorite things to do, and that's probably wrong of me, Wanda. One of my favorite things to do is put good leaders to the test. Like, I know what you want, but I'm just not going to give it to you yet. I know what you desire, but I feel like between me and God, you're just not going to receive that yet. Then what happens? Either they say, okay, Pastor, tell me what I can do. Let me grow. Let me learn. Or they bounce. And when they bounce, I go, that's what I thought. That's unfortunate. That's a bummer, but that's what I thought. You weren't ready. You wanted what you wanted, but you weren't posturing yourself. You weren't planting yourself. You positioned yourself, but you didn't posture yourself, and you didn't plant yourself. Because if you postured yourself and you planted yourself, you'd see that your blessing was right in front of you. Without naming names, we know somebody right now that had a great desire to be part of CLC, and they had a really big heart to run cafes and coffee shops and all that. They're no longer with us. We didn't have a coffee shop when they bounced. Now we do. This person could totally be running the coffee shop, but they're nowhere around. No! Weak leaders leave early. They leave early. But strong leaders, they dive in more as things get tougher. Okay, Pastor, I'll wait. I'm going to dive in more. Okay, God, I'll stick it through. I'm going to dive in more. Weak leaders give up early. Strong leaders hang in there. They plant themselves, and they dive in more. Weak leaders, when things don't go their way, they start to doubt their call. It's like, maybe I'm not called to pastoring. Maybe I'm not called to ministry. Maybe I'm not called to teach. Things don't happen the way they pictured it happening, they start doubting their call. When bad things happen to weak leaders, they start doubting the call on their life. Well, if I really was truly called, that wouldn't have happened to me. But strong leaders, when bad things happen to them, it just affirms them. It just makes them know their calling even more. When people come against me, I just know God. Even more, I just embrace the calling of God on my life. I just embrace it even more. Weak leaders, they avoid more conflict by following the status quo. They avoid more conflict by just following the status quo. When bad things start to happen to them, when people start to come against them, they'll say, I don't want to hurt your feelings, so I'm just going to follow the status quo. I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm just going to do the status quo. I don't want to push anybody's limits, so I'm going to just do the status quo. I don't want to run anybody out of the church, so I'm going to just do the status quo. That's weak leadership. That's weak leadership. Do I want to be sensitive to visitors? Sure I do, but I'm not going to be a super seeker-sensitive church. God hasn't called us to be a super seeker-sensitive church. He's called us to win the lost and save the dying. And we do that how we know to do that. I don't want to offend anybody either. But I'm not going to compromise the gospel. I want to win the lost and save the dying. So we don't compromise that. We don't do the status quo because we're afraid we're going to offend somebody. Strong leaders, when there's conflict that arises, they see opportunity in that. Listen, there's lots of conflict all the time. I have leaders in our own church that come to me, Pastor Kevin, I don't know what to do. I tried my very best, and she was just angry with me. And you know what? I look at those leaders and say, you know what? Don't get discouraged. Don't doubt your call. Don't bounce early. Learn from this. Learn from this. This is an opportunity to learn so we do it better next time. So we think this through next time. We position ourselves to see the outcome. And then we posture ourselves to assist in that outcome. And then we plant ourselves to make sure that the outcome happens the way it's supposed to happen. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, everybody? So, that's the kind of like the baby intro. It's amazing how much you can learn from a great leader before the great leader was even 5 years old. He didn't even know he was going to be a great leader. But look at all the application we see just from his family, just from his mother, just from his sister, just from positioning and posturing and planting. Look at the application. This is how you become a great leader. Forget all that other stuff. No, don't forget it. But this stuff is vital. We've got to know the 3 P's with the 3 B's each. I didn't know that, but you position yourself, posture yourself, and plant yourself. And each one of those have 3 B's. B, B, B. Okay? Any questions? What questions do you have? Comments? What do you got? We'll take just a couple before we take a break. I'd love for you to ask questions. Really, you should ask questions. Think of something. I'm challenging you to think of something. Or a comment. Yes, Corinne.
Like what would it take to... When are we going to start the group? The
small groups?
The small groups?
Again, this next season of small groups?
Yeah, when are we starting that?
Great question. Great question. We originally had planned for the spring, okay, but now spring has sprung. One of the things we talked about in our staff meetings was that as much as we want to start up our small groups again, we wanted to regroup and rethink our small group approach. So we might be like, maybe instead of just doing it by location now, we do it by like interest, you know. So
what would it take, for example, me to start a small group in my home?
Great.
What would it take?
Let's just sit down and talk about the how, the when, and you know how that all looks, because we need to start our small groups again. You guys had a pretty big small group with the family and the Spanish folks, and it was quite successful. We want to start that again, but you know, before we start just yours, let's talk about, would there be others and we could start all at the same time and do the same thing again. And I know we want to, Corinne, so we've just got to, that's posturing yourself, saying, okay, what can I do to help get that started? Let's get that on the books, and let's get that on the calendar, because if there's interest in our church, then we need to make that happen. So there were some other groups that just, you know, I didn't know if it was, I mean, I know that Kathy had a really good group over there in Kaiser. The Daniels had a pretty good group in South Salem. Now it's just a matter of regrouping and say, do we want to do it exactly the same way, or do we want to do interest groups? Because Randy's group really stunk. So.
Hey, I was faithful.
But thank you for bringing that up. Let's talk that through.
I have a comment about what we just talked about.
Okay.
I think it's kind of cool to recognize that Moses' sister wasn't an adult.
Mm-hmm.
She was young herself, and she recognized the need, and she did those things, but she was young. She was, and we don't really know a whole lot about her, but I just think that should be noted, that she was a young person.
She was young.
And she was already doing those things
she
that
was
a great
young.
leader does.
So teenagers, junior hires, and even younger, it's never too young to identify these 3 Ps. It's never too young. I had a great meeting with Judy today, and we talked about children's ministry stuff, and our hearts are that our youngest children start to recognize ministry opportunities and leadership opportunities from the youngest age, and I think that's so important. Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Yes, Judy.
I want to Moses' mother.
Yeah.
Instead of just allowing to happen what was decreed to happen, she gave God a chance to work, and then ended up having her son live with her for a couple of years.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And that's an interesting thought, because in one sense you would look at it as disobedience. It was rebellion against Pharaoh, right? In one sense you look at it as rebellion against Pharaoh, but in another sense it's like, no, I'm trusting my God. Today, if you rebel against the president, you get thrown in prison. You get thrown in prison if there's a law decreed in the land and you don't move your car every 2 hours, you're paying the consequences. Okay? So that's an interesting thought. But she gave God a chance to intervene. But again, let's look forward after that. She could have bolted after that. Okay, God did His miracle. Let's jet. But she didn't. She honored Pharaoh's daughter by doing what she promised, and then brought the son back.
Don't you think that Moses' mom knew that God had a plan for him because He saved him when she took him and put him in the water?
Mm-hmm.
That God had a plan, and she was going to go along with that plan no matter what it led to.
Yeah, and that's one thing that would strengthen us as leaders. God's got a plan for your life. So when there's little bumps and bruises in your circumstances, don't let that get to you. There's an end result. So you just trudge on through. Okay, that was a little bit of a hurdle, but I know what God wants for me in the end. So that hurdle is going to have no consequence on the end result, right? So that's what probably Moses' mom saw. Hey, my boy has a plan. There is a God call on his life. So this little hurdle of Pharaoh killing my son, no. She knew there was an end result, so she went with that. She just trusted God that end result would take place, and it did. Yeah. All right, you guys, let's take a 5 to 10 minute breather, and then the second portion we're not going to record because it's going to be completely exercise. So get ready to have a little bit of fun, okay? So, Rod the Pod!
No.
Yeah, Rod the Pod!
No.
So if you need to go to the restroom or you need to get a drink, have at it.
No.
Ixnay. What happened to our visitors, Daryl? I'm going to have to find out where our Satan crew, they were supposed to be here, with 10 of them. Yeah, and then the Willises said they were bringing some people too.
We make every day from 9 to 10. We do
Oh, is it?
6 to 7, 8. All the blog workout on
They did.
There we go.
Are you going to produce it?
Yeah.
I think so.
All right. You put it together. Let's do it.
That's fine.
Rod the Bod workout on CCTV from 6 to 7. Wake up with Rod the Bod. Let's get our morning going.
No, that's fine. I've already asked him.
What?
I've already asked him. So that's Stacy.
Oh,
to figure out how I'm going to do that.
And Kathy don't move fast enough.
Yeah.
Her on board.
Just say yes.
Convention.
Okay.
You're
If I
gonna.
didn't move fast enough,
Yeah.
so you better get walking. That treadmill's not training me very well over there. It's not making me go too fast these days.
I started this week doing stairs.
Did you? Like the elliptical or just regular?
Regular stairs.
That's painful.
Yeah, after my body gets done with that initial shock, then I'll start doing the upper body.
I do the treadmill, although this week I've been bluffing that I did do it today, but you know,
It's an eyeglass.
my upper I'm weak in my upper body strength. You're weak all over. But I'm working on it, sister.
Well, that's good.
Anyway, so I have to
Isn't that
upper body strength. But I even walk and it's like
Boy, are we digging
I
up?
get all stiff and sore. I'm not getting old.
Well, I know, I used to power lift a lot. I know now, boy, I used to do pyramid training, work out for 2 hours straight, and we would start light, build up the heaviest, and go back down. And, boy, it's just,
That would be cool.
it don't take much to get you wore out.
I would watch it.
Once you have to produce it.
No, I really miss my
Oh God.
my 20s, man. I miss those days.
Oh my goodness.
I call those my glory years.
Boy, I tell ya, man.
My fun years were like between kind of 16 and a half to about 20, 21.
You guys were actually more funnier than I was.
After that,
Yours was
I moved to Tri-Cities,
I got candy all over.
and well, actually not even 16. I would say 17.
Can you feel the burn?
It might have been 16. 16 and a half, I guess. I was like a junior in high school. I started hanging out with all my friends and wasn't home much. And
You have to take it.
That would be, yeah. Well, see, it was my 20s were my glory days.
well, I went into full-time ministry at 22. So from there, I just been
Just
doing
bam, bam.
this since I was 22. So,
To the extreme that you do it now? Really?
yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure you don't have great hair.
I don't have any hair left. So. But actually, I started ministry back when I was even younger for my dad. But when I went into full-time ministry, I had just turned 22, and it was pretty intense. Well, that's just my character, I guess. I don't do anything
That,
so.
A personality
I
type.
guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it really got intense. Well, my first full-time ministry job was in Spokane. That's why I was a volunteer in Eastern Washington for about a year and a half. I did the junior high group for about a year and a half. But then I got offered a full-time ministry job in Spokane as a youth pastor.
Okay.
So I left Eastern Washington to be a full-time youth pastor. And I had about 13 kids when I moved there, and in a year and a half, it grew to 130 every Wednesday night. And every Wednesday night, we had 130 in youth group. So we kicked out the adults because they had Wednesday night service, and they went into the fellowship hall, and the youth program took over the whole sanctuary on Wednesday nights. But it was a really old-fashioned church.
Yeah.
So I couldn't stay there much longer because the youth ministry was progressing, but the church wasn't, and that was a challenge for me. So I turned it over to one of our youth staff, and then I went and evangelized for a few months. So I was still, now I'm 23-ish, almost 24. And that's the time where I got called back to Eastern Washington. The pastor that I volunteered for called me while I was evangelizing and said, I want you to come be our full-time youth pastor. So that just seemed like a better fit because they were more progressive than my former church. So I moved back there, and it was just like this ever since. So I mean, basically, ministry for us has been just like this for 20 years. And what Michelle is doing this summer, she was part of my program when I did that. I don't know how long ago. It was a long time ago. Yeah. Like she has Epic and I had Grow. It's called Grow. It was a summer program for student leadership development. We did a lot of what she's going to be doing with missions outreach in the city. A lot of learning. Like the first 2 years here of Lift, we went through First and Second Timothy. Well, that's what my students went through in Growth, was through the whole book of First and Second Timothy.
We're doing that this summer. It's called Nano, which is the opposite of Epic. Get it?
Get it?
Like 2 weeks. But it'll be.
When you say Nano, I'm thinking of Mork and Mindy, which you probably
Nano. I love Mork and Mindy, man.
But yeah, it's going to be open to all the youth rather than like Epic this year, which is open to seniors.
Okay.
And so Nano will be open to all of the youth, and it's like an intense 2-week-long student.
Oh, okay.
Every day.
Epic is not 2 weeks.
No, Epic.
Nano will
be. Yeah, Nano will be simple.
But what's really cool is they'll be doing their 2-week journey, paralleling our E3 students, the interns that are there 2 months. Two this year. We had more, but things fall through, and so now we have 2. But those 2 will be a lot of fun.
That's really cool. Very cool.
So I never get to go with Penny.
That's neat.
Are you doing all those? I'm glad to see you guys. Who's watching the kids? Oh yeah? That's awesome.
Temples right here. Don't forget to break out the cucumbers for the eyes. The avocado rub, That's a pretty sweet match.
And right under here,
people call in and ask about that water.
Matt, you're growing up. You look so much older all of a sudden.
I cut my hair, I used to shave my head. And it'll make me look younger again. That's the opposite. It really makes me look older.
You look 3.
I love it.
Yeah, it goes. Mom was that.
Remember the tail?
It would shave everything in heaven. It wasn't even like a mullet. It was like...
No, it just wasn't like it. I just had the mullet.
Yeah, it wasn't a mullet. I've had kind of a mullet myself.
I never had a mullet.
Oh, Randy,
but see, I have such thick hair that
it's not too late.
No, it is too late. It is too late. No, I had the.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
I had the
everybody ready?
Long bowl cut.
Oh.
My hair was way long.
But it was all shaved underneath.
And then we pulled it up.
All right, here we go, everybody.
Oh, I hated that. That was just. Those are the weird hairdo.